Hello and welcome back to the County Chat channel. We are continuing on with the previews for the 2026 season. We're working our way through the Division 2 counties, but at this point we've got to the end of the Division 2 counties. We've gone all the way through the teams that have stayed in Division 2 and we're now onto the teams that have been relegated from Division 1. So to begin with, we're starting with the team who came furthest last in Division 1, and that was, unfortunately for them, was Worcestershire. Worcestershire, the home is New Road. The Pears, as they are known affectionately up there. And yeah, they had a really, really tough 2025. I think before the season, most county cricket fans, experts, people interested, had them going down, and they did go down. They were quite far adrift at the end. It was, again, fairly obvious from a fairly early period of time in the season that they were going to go down, and that was obviously, a tough thing for them to deal with. Of course, they also had to deal with a lot of the flooding factors that have been an issue at Worcester and New Road in the last couple of years. So we'll go on to discuss that. We're going to look at their team for 2026, look at how they're looking for their first year in Division 2 for a few years, and yeah, just talking about where they're at and what Worcestershire are looking like for 2026. As always, we'll kind of go through the stats. We'll go pick out a standout player from last year and a potential star performer from the year coming. And yeah, just sort of, again, just discussing Worcestershire's chances, how they might be looking and where they might be finishing in the County Championship Division 2. So without further ado, we'll get on to the sort of leadership group. To me, I kind of just keep it as simple as captain and head coach, because I usually struggle to find a sort of vice captaincy answer. There's usually a few people available. Anyway, for the head coach, it is Alan Richardson. He was the head coach last year. I think he signed his contract maybe the year before that. So he stayed in the role despite the relegation, and he will stay in the role as well with his captaincy colleague, I guess, in Brett D'Oliveira. If you know Worcestershire very, very well, they have a lot of a lot of D'Oliveras, simply put. Basil D'Oliveira years ago, and then there's a few in between that I can't say I can think of the first names of. But anyway, Brett is very much a county cricket staple for D'Oliveira. The D'Oliveira family are, and Brett is the sort of current generation's equivalent, and he has been the captain at Worcester for a little bit of time since about the early 2020s. I think it was that he came in as captain. Vice captain, I think, would be Jake Libby. Gareth Roderick as well is a very possible option. Tom Taylor and Matthew Waite. They've got a few quite senior pros, so there's plenty of directions they could go in. If they haven't announced a vice captain, I couldn't find the vice captaincy announcement if there is one. And then the overseas, they've only got a main overseas. Worcestershire, it wouldn't surprise me if they just go with one overseas in a season they're in Division 2. Though they might sign someone through the season. But anyway, without further ado, the overseas they've signed is Bayers Swainpole. He's a South African. I could have absolutely butchered that surname and first name, so apologies if I have. But he's a sort of bowling all-rounder. It was the kind of vibe I've got from him. He's played a bit of T20 Blast stuff for Kent in the past, but other than that, I think this is his first venture into county championship cricket. And he looks like a really clever signing to me. I will get on to him in a minute, but yeah, he takes wickets at a very low average and a batting average kind of quite high up. So he'll be a good player for Worcestershire to have. And kind of subverted expectations, because I think most of the people would have said Worcestershire's strength last year was their bowling, and they've kind of gone for a bowling all-rounder. So maybe they've seen something in his batting that they really like, and he'll bat a bit higher up than I've predicted. But his averages at the moment in batting are more like 26, 27, and his bowling average is all the way down near 20. So very impressive. For ins and outs, so this is like players coming in, players going out, just within the county game and between counties. They've got no players to come in, Worcestershire, at least, again, what I could find. But then with outs, they had two people they released. So they got rid of the left-arm leg spinner, Tom Hinley, and they got rid of Yadvinder Singh. So those are the two outs, just two released. They haven't gone to any other county. They just were released from their contracts, unfortunately. So now we'll get on to the batters, the bowlers, and the all-rounders. So sort of just a squad list for Worcestershire. So to begin with the batters, you've got Jake Libby, Gareth Roderick, Adam Hose, Kashivalli, Rob Jones, Dan Lakegan, Rahan Edavaleth, Isaac Mohammed, and Henry Cullen. For bowlers, you've got Tom Taylor, Ben Allison, Adam Finch, Ben Gibbon, Fateh Singh, Jack Home, and Harry Darley. And then all-rounders, there is Brett D'Oliveira, Matthew Waite, there's Swain Pole, as I mentioned earlier, and Ethan Brooks. So that is the Worcestershire team. As with a lot of other Division 2 counties, and maybe not Division 2 counties, but maybe counties of Worcestershire's size, because Worcestershire have been a Division 1 county for the recent years. It is quite a small squad, and I think it's always a limitation of some of these smaller counties is obviously the depth and the injury problems if they come around, how that might affect the team and how they might be looking. But to me, Worcestershire have got a lot of depth in especially one department in the bowling. I think it's more the batting where they have been struggling in recent years. And that's also been partly down to New Road and the conditions at New Road. Excuse me. So, yeah, sort of looking back on their 2025 and talking about how that went. I mean, it was a rough year. I mean, as simple as that, Firstly, to be kind of soundly relegated from Division 1 or be relegated from any division is a tough thing as a cricketer. And to be brutally honest, I don't think they ever looked like staying up. As I sort of said at the top of the show, I think it was the one thing as the county chat I was very much on last year with my previews is that when I looked at Worcestershire's team and looked at the other teams in Division 1, I just couldn't see a way in which they stayed up. And unfortunately, for Worcestershire's case, I was proven very much correct in that sense. They also have spent a lot of 2025, again, as I mentioned at the top of the show, really, really struggling with their home ground at New Road due to flooding. It's a very low-lying ground, and again, it's something which doesn't get covered very much because, in a way, it's not all that interesting if you're not from Worcestershire, but again, that can't help a team, especially if the teams aren't going very, very well and you're having to move ground. And they played a good amount of fixtures at New Road, don't get me wrong, but there were some fixtures at points of the season where it had to be at Kidderminster and a few other outgrounds I'm sure that they have, but Kidderminster was the one I could at least think of while thinking of it. Yeah, I haven't been able to ascertain whether or not that will be the case in 2026. I've mentioned in a few other videos, but if you're not British or English, we have an incredibly wet winter, especially January and February. So there is, especially for the push of start of April, I'm sure New Road particularly maybe was really struggling because there was a lot of flooding around the country. So yeah, fingers crossed for Worcestershire. I think New Road is up there within the probably top 3 of my favourite county cricket grounds. It's such a beautiful ground. I cannot wait to visit it one day. But yeah, it is basically a floodplain from what I've been told and understood from people who have been around Worcestershire. So it's a difficult thing for them to deal with, especially in increased heavy rain that we've been having here in the UK. Anyway, far from getting away from weather reporting, county chat, we'll stick to the cricket. But the team itself, I think, as much as like they're very used to being an underdog team, this Worcestershire team, I think being in Division 1, I mean, their payroll, I'd imagine, was far, far lower than the majority of Division 1 counties. And they're quite used to that kind of backs against the wall thing. I think that's one of the great strengths of Worcestershire in recent years, and how they've sort of again been able to punch above their weight and stay in Division 1 a lot of the time. I think the team itself, again, has plenty of strength, but as I mentioned earlier, I think the depth of bowling, especially is such a great strength for the county. Their batting still does have a lot of question marks, if you ask me. Like, there's a lot of players I really like the look of in their batting department, but I think it would be safe to say there's a lot more question marks than there are answers. They're full stops, if you will. Whereas the bowling, it's a lot more full stops, to continue with that slightly confused analogy. So it's an interesting position for Worcestershire to be in, and also then going back to New Road, and we'll stay away from the weather, but New Road has always been a difficult place for batters to bat, quite frankly. So obviously, if you're playing half your games there, batters just tend to struggle more anyway. So again, some of their statistics can be taken with a pinch of salt, some of the batters, but at the end of the day, they're also playing half the games away from home, and it's not like the batters were dominating all around the counties just generally. But then again, that was also in Division 1, so that those sort of variations of stats is always interesting to see. Yeah, I think they have lots of young talent as well, especially in the batting department. And to be honest, and we'll go, talking about the 2026 a bit more in a minute, but I kind of hope they go for a bit of a reset year, especially if the ground has been a bit of an issue. It's just looking at it like we've got a year in Division 2, we've got some of these really amazing young players, like particularly for me, Rehan Adewale, Isaac Mohammed, and Dan Lakegan. Those three I've all seen bat, and they're very young and they're very inexperienced, but they all look incredibly, incredibly good. I think they could fit in a lot through the season, and maybe at the expense of people like Rob Jones, Kashif Ali, maybe even Adam Hose and the like, because I just think they need to start looking for the future and how they can get back to Division 1 and be competing in Division 1. And to me, for their return to Division 1, they need a step up in their batting. I think if they went back up and just had the same batting they did last time, quite a similar result would happen to what happened in 2025, if you catch my drift there. The overseas signing, as I mentioned, I think that could be proved to be a masterstroke with Bear Swainpole. Like if his first class stats are anything to go off, his bowling should be incredibly valuable for this Worcestershire team. And yeah, I hope for Worcestershire's sake that is the case. I hope that they are able that he is a really good signing and he lives up to the sort of stats that he has, and he can find the lengths and lines to really trouble batters in England. And again, you be good with the Duke's ball, because at the end of the day, he would have only probably used a Kookaburra ball to this point. So that's always something you have to consider for these bowlers who are coming over for their first stint of county cricket. Anyway, so we've been doing this throughout the county previews. Excuse me. We've been doing a standout player for 2020 from 2025, and then a potential star performer for 2026. So the standout player is more of like a recognition of service, is how I've been putting it. It's kind of looking back on your 2025, who was the best player from 2025? And if you were the best player in 2025, you're likely the best player in 2026. To me, for Worcestershire, it may have been the easiest of the standout players to do. The standout player for Worcestershire in 2025 was Tom Taylor. He led Division 1, all Division 1 bowlers in wickets. Again, as I mentioned, he was bowling at New Road half the time, but again, he did take wickets away from home. He took wickets at quite a low clip. I mean, he just had a really excellent season, quite frankly. And yeah, it was nice for him to have such a season. Yeah, an average of 22.84 wickets, going 58 wickets, which was a good 4 or something ahead of the nearest competitor. And yeah, he's just an excellent bowler. Quite frankly, I don't think it takes much of watching him. I personally, he was one of the people I got my sort of my bee in the bonnet about him not being in the England Lions squad. I can't understand someone of his sort of like just like experience, but also consistency. Wouldn't be someone who would have been worthwhile bowling at some of the England batters down in Australia, but that is a matter for another video, and I've done plenty of talking about it. So yeah, Tom Taylor, standout player for 2025. In a way, I almost, in a more like footballing brain sense, because of how good he'd been in 2025, I kind of expected he wouldn't be there in 2026. But he had years left in his contract. There's no such thing as sort of buying and selling in county cricket, so he's still at Worcestershire. So again, how that will look, how his wickets will play out in a Division 2 setting, it will be interesting to see whether or not he has another pretty similar big year and takes the most wickets by any bowler by a long way, because he had 8 more than Lewis Rees did in Division 2, who got the most wickets in Division 2. So it will be interesting to see how Tom Taylor does in 2026. Potential star performer. This is the only time I've done this so far. I don't know if it would fit within my own realms of my own rules, but potential star performer, to explain it again, if you're just a Worcestershire fan listening into this episode, potential star performer is meant to be a bit more like who for 2026, looking ahead, might be someone who breaks out. I've got a two. I've kept on telling myself I was going to do less of this, but I've got 2 answers for this one, because I think the overseas and Bear Swainpole could be an unbelievably good signing and prove to be, a really, get 500 plus runs with the bat and take 40 odd wickets with the ball. If that is the case, then obviously he would be a really obvious potential star performer. But then and again, I also find it that I don't, within my own rules for this segment that I've made, an overseas signing feels like a bit of a half go of it, because if you're signing an overseas, even if it's their first season, you're kind of expecting them to pull off these kind of things. So I have got another answer, and it is Dan Laitgen. I also think I'm butchering the pronunciation of his surname, so apologies. I'm seeming to do that a lot in this preview. But I watched him bat against Sussex at the end of last year. I was watching last game of the season, and he just looked brilliant, simply put. Like, he had all of these sort of intangibles. The way the Worcestershire commentator was talking about him, again, someone who would have seen a lot more of him than I would have, just was this kind of like air of inevitability for his runs and the way he played and the way he looked. And again, if he gets a good run of it, which I hope they give players like himself and Isaac Mohammed and Rehan Adewale, as I said, that will be a real benefit to Worcestershire in the long run. And yeah, he just scored runs quite easily. He didn't score many last year. I mean, he would be, if he does have a really big year, it would be a cool pick to have made, because I think he played 3 matches last year. But yeah, as I sort of say, I kind of hope Worcestershire go a little bit more that way with it, and just kind of really try and develop these young players that they're sort of lucky enough to have in some senses. Anyway, time to kind of move on to sort of some screen sharing, looking at the sort of quite what were fairly bleak stats from 2025. So as you see at the top here, Adam Hose unfortunately got quite a nasty injury playing in the 100, I think. But Adam Hose had a very good year, but largely propped up by a big 266 at the Utilita Bowl. I sort of predicted him to break out, and then he did average 45. So, another mystically good pick from the county chat there. Jake Libby, I think he's one of those cricketers you can almost bank on. He's one of those openers who falls into this bank for 1,000 to 800 runs a season. He is an excellent batter. He propped up the batting unit of Worcestershire massively. And I mean, honestly, looking at it now, you think about it in the potential, the sort of star performer for 2025. Tom Taylor took the headlines because he was leading the league in wickets, but scoring 1,000 runs with half of your games being on that New Road wicket, I think can't be understated how impressive that is. And again, he's just a very, very good cricketer who's been around the block, and he doesn't fail to score runs. Not for very long, at least. Ethan Brooks, the sort of batting all-rounder, he had a good season, sort of from 6 or 7 in the lineup, an average of low 30s, but highish strike rate, 788 runs. You'd be pretty happy with that. Gareth Roderick, the wicketkeeper batter, lowish average, but he did do opening the batting. He also moved around the order quite a lot. And also opening the batting and being a wicketkeeper batter, I think, is one of the trickiest things in all of cricket. So again, a very impressive sort of, I guess, season from him. But again, the average he would want to be a lot higher than 28.88. Matthew Waite, again, another sort of bowling, or sort of just all-rounder, 500 runs at 25, not brilliant. There's Dan Lakegan with his 3 matches, again, average 25, never got past 50, but I think that 44 would have been against Sussex, and he did just look very, very good. Here's the skipper, Brett D'Oliveira, average of 24, not the season we have liked. An amazing 100 at Somerset to help save the game before getting given out by one of the worst LBW decisions I think I have ever seen. If you know, you know on that one. And if you don't, give it a look up, because it is one of a remarkably poor LBW. But yeah, 523 runs when 121 of them came in like one of the first rounds of the week, first round of last year. An average of 24.9. Just a good season, but not a great one. Kashivali and Adavaleth, pretty similar. Kashivali got a lot of rope in Division 1, and again, 350s, 457 runs at an average of 20. For a top 5 batter, that is just nowhere near good enough. And the same goes for sort of Rob Jones, who had 5 matches, 10 innings at it, average of 13. For me, he should not be getting much more of a go for Worcestershire, or especially when they have all these young batters, such as, I mean, even Kashif I would play in head of someone like Rob Jones, but they have a lot of young batters in Adavaleth, Latgan, and Mohammed, wherever he might be. Isaac Mohammed. He just played in the one game at the end of the season and didn't do very much at New Road against Sussex. And then the bowling, again, the bowling was actually just very much a strength for Worcestershire sort of throughout the year. Tom Taylor, 58 wickets at 22s. Waite, 38 wickets at 23s. Jacob Duffy, the New Zealand quick they had for a bit of the last year, he didn't do brilliantly, but an average of 28.52 is nothing to sniff at. Ben Allison, 40 wickets at an average of 28 throughout the season. A very handy seam bowler. Adam Finch, a good backup, I'd say. And then they had a few dotted around, a few wickets here and there. Ethan Brooks, as I mentioned, bowls some handy medium pace, average of 41. So yeah, they had a bit of dots of people coming in. Fateh Singh, the spinner there, Burt with a few wickets with his stint at Worcestershire. But yeah, that's kind of all for the looking at the sort of stats for Worcestershire in general. As you can tell from that, it's some tough going. You always have to take a pinch of salt, the bowling and the batting figures for Worcester and New Road in the last however long. For example, for a spinner, there's been very few wickets taken for spinners there. And then for pace bowlers, it's almost like a predominant pace bowler taking wickets. So you have to realise the percentage of wickets they're taking is so much higher because of half the time they're playing at New Road. Then the same goes for the batting. Of course, the batters are having to play at New Road. So some of those, that's why I was harping on Jake Libby's season so much, because I think you have to really appreciate and respect just how impressive of a season that actually is from him to have scored 1,000 runs in Division 1 whilst also playing, again, half your games at New Road. I keep feeling like I'm repeating the New Road a lot, but it's because, it's quite a unique place to bat in recent years, and it's been one of the places, if you looked in all the fixtures of all the rounds, it kind of never really got up beyond 300 as an average score, whereas in the middle of the summer, pretty much every other ground got pretty flat, and a lot of spin wickets started being taken, but they just didn't happen at Worcester. Anyway, going on to sort of their predicted first day lineup and predicted finish for 2025. It was a tough one. 2026, sorry. It was a tough one for me to do. If I was honest, I had to unfortunately take a bit of it on the chin. Is that I think, had I had my time again, sorry, I'm just struggling to find it, I probably would have put Worcestershire higher up. If you see the predicted finish already, it is 7th. That is pretty harsh on Worcestershire. I worry for them struggling through the season. If I'm honest, I think there is a reality that they have just got relegated. They did struggle a lot in Division 1 and all of the stuff around their home ground. I think if I was honest, I probably wouldn't have put Kent or Northamptonshire above them, but hey, maybe I'll say that as a preemptiveness, and I'll be right, and Worcestershire will finish 7th, and I wish I just never said anything. But I worry for their kind of, again, if they're having to move ground a lot, I worry for the batting depth. But the bowling depth, I think, is super impressive. So this is the potential first day lineup. So I've jumped to the predicted finish, but I think I felt like it was a bit of an elephant in the room, putting a team that's just been relegated all the way down to 7th. But yeah, to open up the batting, Jake Libby will be opening the batting. Who they open with him is a bit more of a matter, to be discussed in a way. Gareth Roderick did a lot of it last year, but I have a feeling they'll want him a little bit more of a wicket-keeping option and just being a wicket-keeper batter. I think that's good for any wicket-keeper batter, just kind of keeping a similar-ish position in the lineup, whereas he moved around a lot last year, and I just don't think that's good for any batter, really. So Jake Libby up top, and I've got him starting with Rehan Adavalath. At the end of the season, he opened, I think, 4 matches in a row with Jake Libby. So I hope looking back on it that was them kind of, just getting a bit of familiarity between the two batters and get some runs and some time at the crease for Adavalath. I've got Lettigan batting 3. I think it's because I wanted to sneak him into the team. And I wasn't quite sure how to do it. And I don't think they have an obvious 3, maybe other than Gareth Roderick or one of Isaac Mohammed or Al-Kashif Ali. But we'll get onto that in a moment. Adam Hose, again, he's had a very good year last year. Didn't get to play the sort of second half of the season, but he's always averaged quite low for red ball cricket and is quite a focused white ball player. So whether or not he will bat less this year in county cricket, I'm not sure. I hope he doesn't, because I love watching him bat. And I think he's a really, really good red ball player. I think he's like kind of coming good at this point. So I'd sort of hope he doesn't stop. But if he did, then you'd kind of probably move someone like Kashif Ali or Isaac Mohammed into 3, and then put Dan Lakegan at 4, Brett D'Oliveira at 5, and captain. I think Brett D'Oliveira is coming into an interesting sort of season this year. I think if he has a season whereby he's kind of only getting picked and only picking himself because he is a skipper, then it will be a real struggle for him. But I think he's also someone who is willing to drop himself, which I always, you always have to respect a lot. And it will be interesting to see how that kind of his season plays out, basically, the skipper and sort of club legend. Gareth Roderick, I've already mentioned. I think he's a really excellent wicketkeeper batter, and I think if they keep him in and around 5 or 6 throughout the season, I think that'll do a lot of good for him. Give him a bit more of a break at the top of the innings, because he probably did about 8 or 9 matches as an opener, and it didn't go particularly well for him. Other than I think he got one of those, that 100 from an open position. Anyway, here it comes into the sort of strength is the sort of bowling and the all-rounders that they have, because at the moment I've got Ethan Brooks 7, Bayer Swainpoel 8, and Matthew Waite 9. Matthew Waite would be easily the best 9 in county cricket if he was batting all the way down there. So whether or not they'd get rid of a batter, shift everyone up, and then have lots and lots of bowling, or they just go with this amount of bowling and sort of recognise that we have a bit of a weakness up top, but we're going to bat all the way down to 10, because Tom Taylor can bat, and even Ben Allison can hold a bat. So it would be quite a modern look at it in a way, and really relying on your lower order to be able to get some runs. And I've put 12 and 13 here because Kashif Ali, I don't want to say I'm not, and I don't want it to be like the end of his county career because he didn't do brilliantly in Division 1. But Isaac Mohammed I've put above him just because he's 17, is highly rated. But Cashivalli's got, a good amount of experience now at county cricket level. So I'm not like, getting him gone or anything. I just think at the moment, with how I've put together the team, there wasn't space for another batter. And one of these batters would be the one who bats 3. I think, again, Dan Lakegan, I don't think he has batted 3 before. It was more of a case of, again, how do you fit people around him? I honestly think if I were, if it were me and I was having to make these decisions, I think this could be the year you play a lot less but D'Oliveira, and kind of for the nature of being able to let Isaac Mohammed or Cashivalli bat a bit more effectively, especially if you want to keep all these bowlers intact, which I'm sure they will want to do. The good thing about D'Oliveira that he gives you is, of course, his leg spin bowling option, and that is always something you can't forget about when it comes to Brett D'Oliveira, simply put. So yeah, that's Worcestershire for 2026. Again, as I said at the start, I have a bit of a hesitation about where I've put them in the sort of the predicted table, if you will. I have a feeling they might do better than that, and I have a feeling that they could actually be in around the top of the table. I think the thing with Worcestershire, they kind of always do well when they're underestimated, and I don't think a lot of people would see them as a favourite to be promoted straight back up, kind of for all the reasons I've mentioned. But they do have the intangible parts. I mean, one of the things I always look for in these teams that could get promoted or could win the league in Division 1 is having players who take buckets of wickets. Buckets of wickets? Like lots of wickets, and buckets of wickets kind of works, but doesn't also. Because you need to take the 20 wickets to win the games, and to win enough games is usually what can kind of push you from a side that's in the mid-table, that's drawn a lot, but if you win a lot, there's a good chance of you going up. Of course, also New Road being their home, again, me bringing up New Road again, but New Road being such a bowlers friendly place means that more results happen there. So if they win a lot of their games at home, you've already got, say, out of your 7 home games, if you win 5 of them, the teams that went up last year from Division 2 had probably 7 wins, 6 wins. So if you win a lot of your home games at New Road where there's not many draws, do you see how Worcestershire could quite easily get into the top 3, top 2 without much going particularly right? I think what is their limitation is, of course, the depth of the batting, and I also think their bowling, if someone like Tom Taylor did get injured and maybe Swainpole wasn't as good as they hoped he would be bowling wise, and then it was Ben Allison and Ben Gibbon and Adam Finch and the batting group, you'd kind of be looking a lot more like a lower half of the table Division 2 side, if you ask me. But with everyone fit, then they could be. I think basically what I'm trying to say, I think Worcestershire have the biggest variation with where they could finish this year, just depending on so many circumstances. And that will be interesting to see how that plays out. As I've said in the past, I just want to get this in here for Worcestershire fans. Worcestershire has always been a county I've really resonated with and always had a lot of love for. So me putting them in 7th actually was genuinely difficult. And I know no one really probably cares about the predicted table other than me. But that was why I felt the need to maybe explain it as much as I have just then. I actually really hope Worcestershire have an excellent season. Anyway, that is all for this episode of the County Chat and the previews before the 2026 season. If you have enjoyed, make sure to leave a like. If you're watching on YouTube, there'll be some videos, the playlist for the videos, others previews, and then there'll be some videos that you might be interested in yourself. If you've enjoyed, make sure to drop a subscribe if you're here on YouTube. If you're watching or listening on Spotify, drop a follow, a rating, a like, all of those wonderful things, and drop a comment if you have any interest or any thoughts about Worcestershire and it's maybe your home county, because you'll know a lot more than me, as I always want to say in these records. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I really appreciate the time clicking on this video. Make sure you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you very soon.